Hello and welcome to the webinar, Understanding the System. My name is Courtney Williams, the host of America's Kids Belong's FosterCon webinar series. I work at America's Kids Belong to help inspire and equip others to find their yes in the foster care equation. But more importantly, I'm a foster and adoptive mom myself, still learning and growing on this journey. On behalf of America's Kids Belong, I want to welcome you to this webinar. At America's Kids Belong, it is our mission to change the experiences and outcomes for kids in care. And this webinar is one way that we do that. We really want to equip families well to understand their role, to understand the system. And I hear people say this all the time, like, oh, I would love to foster, but I don't want to be part of the system. Or I am fostering and I don't know my role in the system. I don't know how to handle the system. Our goal through this webinar is to help you overcome those things and find ways that you can work well while being part of the system. Today, you're going to hear from two speakers who have a wealth of information, a lot of experience, Deborah Crawford and Charmaine Summers. Again, they both come with years and years of experience. This conversation that we had, their voices in this conversation are very helpful, and I know that you're just going to enjoy it. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with this webinar. And now I'd like to introduce you to our speakers today, Deborah Crawford and Charmaine Summers. Deborah, we're going to start with you. Deborah she and her husband are both licensed social workers in the state of Texas. She was a conservatorship caseworker with CPS for 8.5 years, serving over 20 different counties and handling high caseloads. In 2019, Texas privatized foster care and she chose to leave to pursue her experience with medical social work, then with the school district. As a CPS employee, she was not permitted to foster, but once she left, they decided to move forward in fostering. So they got licensed in the spring of 2021, and they currently have their 10th child placed with them, along with their 2 bio kids. So thanks for joining us today, Deborah.
Thank you. I'm excited.
Yeah, can you share with us a little bit more about yourself and your journey of being a caseworker and then now a foster parent?
Yeah, I got into CPS right out of college and never thought I'd leave. I mean, it was a very stressful, crazy job, but I loved it and working in child welfare in that aspect. And then things happened and I wanted to pursue other types of social work. So in 2019 I left, or in 2020, and that's when Texas privatized, which I'll kind of explain more later. And then, it was always something we talked about wanting to foster, but it was never an option. And so we did in 2021, and it's been crazy and amazing ever since.
That's awesome. So yeah, it'd be great to hear your perspective from being a caseworker and now being a foster parent as well. We also have with us today Charmaine. Charmaine Summers is a licensed clinical social worker. She's worked in child welfare for 18 years. Currently, she supervises the foster care, adoption, and guardianship programs for her county. Separate from working with the Department of Human Services, she also provides contract services for several private agencies in Colorado by completing home studies and post-adoption services. So thanks for being with us, Charmaine.
Thank you.
And I actually am a foster parent in the county that Charmaine works, so I know her pretty well, and I'm super glad that she's here with us today. Can you share with us a little bit more about you, how you got into your role, and what does your role kind of look like for you today?
Yeah, I kind of did things like differently. I got married, had kids, and then I actually started with my education. Probably, oh my gosh, almost 25 years ago. I always knew from the beginning that I wanted to be in a helping profession, which I think was very in line with my own personal faith, and wanted that to be an extension of kind of what I valued and believed within my faith. So social work really seemed to be aligned with that. When I was doing my master's degree, I had to get an internship and really had no clue where I wanted to go. Child welfare seemed very exciting. And so I took an internship with child welfare here in Durango. Wanted to do intake, which is kind of on the front lines doing all the investigations. Did that for a little bit and really enjoyed it. At that point, there wasn't a high turnover of caseworkers, believe it or not. People got a job and they actually stayed within their job for many, many years. A position came open for a foster care caseworker position while I was working as an intern, and I was like, I better take this, or I'm never going to get into the department. Nobody's ever going to leave, so I better just take this working with foster parents, kind of begrudgingly. Uh, but got into it, and it wasn't long, and I absolutely fell in love with the job, and primarily I think because I just had so much respect and admiration for the foster parents that I worked with, that they would take in vulnerable children, didn't know them, open up like their homes and their families and their children's lives, and would take, you know, these kids in that needed a place. And I was like, wow, these these are pretty amazing people. And so ever since then, just really feel privileged to be a support and help foster parents. And that's kind of primarily, you know, why I've stayed in the role that I've stayed in. Just really enjoy our foster families. So yeah, challenging, but definitely so worth it for me personally.
I love that. Yeah, and we're going to hear a lot more from you because you have a lot of experience and things to share. So thank you both for being here. Thank you for joining us and sharing your experiences. As we dive into this, it's a hard topic. A lot of people, you know, I was planning this year's series and thinking about like, what are the questions that we get a lot, or what's the pushback we get from current foster parents and potential foster parents? And this is one of them that I feel like people are often like, I don't want anything to do with the system. So that's what we're going to kind of dive into a little bit now. Deborah, when you hear people say that, when they say, I don't want to foster because of the system, what do you think they even mean when they're saying that?
I definitely think they hear a lot of the bad stuff. Like they hear the negative stories and events and experiences that other people have had, and that's all they go off of. Um, the system is confusing and complicated. Um, when I asked my husband, he said the paperwork, even though I do all the paperwork. So I thought that was kind of funny. It can be a lot of people in and out of your home. There's so many different people and parts to the system, and who's involved in the case in and out of your home and in and out of your lives. Um, I think it just scares people. It's more about the decisions of the system that don't make sense. They may make sense legally, but not like in the eyes of the general population. But really, it's just, you know, all the bad stories and bad experiences that people have had that they hear the most of.
Yeah, for sure. Charmaine, anything you would add to that of what do you think people mean?
Yeah, I think definitely I agree, Deborah. When you think of foster care, you always think of the negative stuff, negative things you hear on the TV. And a lot of times, you know, you really don't hear about the amazing stuff. And honestly, and I tell people this all the time, I'm like, the majority of like adoptions we've had, the majority of foster care placements we've had have actually been like pretty phenomenal and amazing. And the ones that haven't, yeah, they're really tough and they're really challenging. Um, and unfortunately, that's kind of what hits the news, what people hear about, what people are going to make a noise about. Um, I will say that I'll be the first to admit is that we have a very hard, um, honestly, sometimes a very dysfunctional system. I think people have great intentions. I think majority of people that are working in this field really do want the best, really come in wanting the best for children and wanting the best for families, wanting to help. And a lot of times, the complexities of just people's lives, life circumstances, sometimes personalities, sometimes our biases, sometimes having to work with different roles and different people's different perspectives of the system within their roles, really sets people up on opposite ends to, you know, innately cause this conflict. And so that creates a lot of tension. Um, And I would say, just kind of from my perspective, being the foster care, in the foster care role, supporting foster parents, I think what's really challenging is children's behaviors, when they've had grief, when they've had loss, when they've had abuse and neglect. We're going to see a lot of quote unquote bad behaviors, and just kind of reframing that for people, and trying to help people get the training they need. But I think too, a lot of people don't want to come into that because they hear of challenge behaviors and just not sure if they're equipped to deal with that. And so I think that's a big, big part of the system, and people not wanting to get involved. Yeah, Courtney, I honestly, I could go on and on. Um, but I do think, if I were to boil it down, I do think it's, people do have great intentions, but just sometimes perspectives are very different, and it's learning to be flexible and understanding, and work as a team, to overcome that.
Definitely. Yeah, for sure. And you brought up a lot of stuff there. I'm actually going to read. There's our founder and director, Brian Mavis. Brian Mavis is a great philosopher. He's an ex-pastor and he just loves to write. He's a great speaker, but he just released a brand new book called Go Upstream, released at the beginning of September. And I want to read a little blurb from the beginning of his book because he states this really well in the response to people saying that the system causes harm, which, like you just said, Charmaine, it does. But he's got this great pushback, and I just want to share this. So he states, others say the foster care system does more harm than good. I won't deny its flaws. It's far from perfect. Mishandled cases, inadequate support, unhealthy foster homes, failed reunifications. These things happen, and it's devastating. But let's not lose sight of the bigger picture. There's an adage that says, don't tear down a fence until you know why it is there. So before foster care, abused and neglected children had no formal protection, none. The pivotal case of Mary Ellen Wilson in 1874 illustrates this. A 9-year-old girl, severely abused and confined, was rescued by the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals because no child protection system existed. This event catalyzed the creation of the first child welfare organization. So he goes on to say the foster care system isn't the cause of harm, it's a response to it. A broken system, yes, but one that saves lives every day. It provides safety, stability, and hope for kids who need it most. Again, that's from Go Upstream by our founder, Brian Mavis. And I just love that because it really points out the heart of what this webinar is about is, yes, I think all three of us would say the system is broken. The system's not perfect. There's a lot of things that go in and out of it, red tape, all the things that we maybe don't agree with, but it's like we got to do something. And we're not going to treat these kids like animals. Like literally there was no other system in place at that time. So there has to be something, right? But we can make it better, and great people is one way to make it better. And that's why you guys are on here with us today. So yeah, that's just a little brief overview. And again, I just want to reiterate that we have people watching this who are interested in fostering, people, foster parents who maybe have been fostering for years, and they're here just to get CE credit. But they also are here, hopefully, to better understand their role. Because I even feel that, like, sometimes foster parents don't really get, like, where's that line of, like, this is my role versus a caseworker's role versus I can step in here, but I shouldn't step in there. So, Charmaine, how do you describe the primary goal of foster care and specifically the role of a foster parent?
I would say that a foster parent has so many different roles. And if I were to say the biggest piece is being a parent, a healthy parent to their child in the time that they most need it, when their parents are not available. I mean, you can say, all right, advocating for the child is a huge piece of it. And I agree. But I think I personally feel like if foster parents can really stay focused on what does it mean to parent a child that has experienced abuse and neglect and is suffering grief and loss, what does that child need? I would say that probably a lot of foster parents would probably be a lot more successful in kind of staying within that role, being available for the child. trying to carve out time to actually just personally spend time with them, being consistent in getting meals on the table or putting them in a routine, just really being there for the child, listening to their child, integrating them into their family and letting them being a part of their family when the child is dysregulated, taking the time to really listen to what their child is saying to them through their behaviors, really being a good student of what their child really needs. And again, I know that there's so many other important things that foster parents definitely they serve. But it really does boil down to what is a foster parent. You're in the place of that parent who's temporarily unavailable, and so you step in and you just give that child love, attention, consistency, and your time.
Mm. So, what would you say the primary goal of foster care is?
Ah, I would say that it's definitely supporting the child to wherever that child is going to land. We will say that reunification is always the main goal. Um, and absolutely, 100%. We are always working towards reunification to get them back to their parents, to get them back to their family members. And some cases can take so long that you just never know what is going to end up happening. And so I would say, within that larger goal that can maybe happen or maybe not happen, we don't know, we don't have control over it, be a support to their child. So I personally would say that as a foster parent, your main goal within the system is to support their child no matter, what comes, like the ups and the downs, whatever life is going to throw at them, whether their parents are going to be available or not. Yes, you're working on their team for reunification, but being a support and a help to that child is your primary goal of being a foster
Of
parent.
being, yeah, yeah. So, people listening, interested in fostering and just kind of curious, I want to hear from you guys because you both live in different states that do things differently. Again, as America's Kids Belong, we try to recruit and retain foster parents across the nation. So it's very different in different states. There are actually 10 states who license differently of not doing a statewide licensure type program. Some states don't have CPAs, some do, but just in general, I just kind of want to hear if somebody was interested in fostering and getting into the system, what would that look like for the foster family? Deborah, what does that look like in your area?
So I guess we are one in Texas because we do it through CPAs. It's not through the county or state. So we have private CPAs that we can pick and choose from. When you first contact them and are interested, they have orientations all the time of just informational meetings, and then just kind of the list of trainings to start doing. And it looks so scary, but it's really not. I mean, it's just, if you do a few a week or something, and just sit down and watch a few webinars, it's really not that scary. I was just making a small list. Like we have trainings on water safety, human trafficking, behavior intervention, medication, trauma-informed care. And then there's things that you have to do to your house to follow foster care regulations, locking certain things that has to be locked up, making sure your room and space are ready based on the age or gender that you're willing to accept or have a preference for based on your family needs, background checks, a formal home study, and then just having that conversation with your family about what would work best for your home and situation and like age, gender, little kids, older kids, stuff like that. So, but just getting licensed through a private agency in Texas and going through the trainings and just the changes that we had to make around our house.
And you kind of shared that at the beginning, but so Texas just changed that recently, where it used to be through the counties or through the state, but now everybody goes through
Well,
CPAs,
the
right?
the foster part didn't change, so that's always been through private agencies. It's the legal side of it, like the caseworker used to be a state employee, And now instead, when kids are removed legally, the case is then transferred to this third party agency. And so Texas is divided into 12 different regions. And so each region has their own agency that was awarded that contract to be the agency for that region. So we all have different agencies around Texas that do the conservatorship casework and the kinship homes and the adoptions and stuff like that. But the foster part has always been with CPAs.
Yeah. We were first licensed in North Dakota. When you get licensed in North Dakota and a lot of states, you get licensed through a county and you're licensed for their entire state. So it's not like a county licensure, you're licensed for the entire state. And we moved to Colorado and it was a bit different. So Charmaine, can you share what it's like in Colorado to get licensed?
Yes, so we have a mixture, I would say. So within the state of Colorado, our county here in La Plata County, we definitely are mandated through all the state rules. We have to follow all their rules and regulations. I think probably more and more, a lot of the counties are choosing to go with CPAs. So using them as where they would place, using them as their foster care placement agencies. Um, there's probably not that many counties, and I should actually get a number of what that really is, but I think probably less counties actually still have their own foster care program. So I will personally say that in La Plata County, we still have our own county run that's mandated by the state with the rules and the regs. We have our own foster care program here with the Department of Human Services. And so what that looks like for us is our team, there's 4 of us, 3 full-time foster care caseworkers, and then myself. And we do everything, from recruitment to training to home studies, then want certification, and then we monitor the foster homes, and we'll do the recertification. And what is most important to me is we also provide the support to our families, coming alongside them. So from the get-go, from the beginning, I personally would like to meet our families from the beginning when they come through the door, and to tell them about our program, to meet them personally, to introduce them to the caseworker they're going to be working with. And hopefully they will stay with that foster care caseworker from the beginning, doing their certification, kind of really holding their hand through the whole process, because it is a long process with, so many things you have to do to get certified. And so you have this caseworker that I always tell new folks that are getting certified, I'm like, this is like, first, like really, this is like at the forefront of my brain, and I'm just kind of retelling you all this of what you're supposed to do. Probably 5 or 10 minutes after you walk out the door, you're going to be like, what did she just say? What's like the first step? And so I'm just like, don't worry, you have a foster care caseworker. If you forget what you need to do, if you get what that website is, if you forget what, step 3 or 4 is, you can call your caseworker. That's the most important information, is to remember who that caseworker is, connect with them, and they will help you through the process. And so sticking with that caseworker, through certification, through doing their home study, and then hopefully through their first placement. Sometimes we have to change them around depending on just kind of workloads and stuff. But yeah, just we're with the Department of Human Services, mandated by the state with all, Volume 7 and all their rules and regs. But again, one of those rare, I think probably more so rare counties that still has their own foster care program, where we do everything. But we do have some other private agencies here in the area. I think at least I know of one. But yeah, hopefully we can continue to offer this service for the county, and stay connected to human services.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the parents interested. That's kind of what the process looks like in different areas, different places. We have a whole thing on our website that you could go and you can click on your state, and it kind of walks through licensure in every single state. So that's if you're likely not from Colorado or Texas, then you can check that out on our website. So, okay, foster parents licensed, and then a child comes into care, what are the roles of the different people once a child's into care, and how can foster parents navigate that well with all these different people involved? Like, who are the different caseworkers that are in play in a case? Charmaine, you want to take that?
I
Like,
would,
you
I
can
would
start from like when a kid comes into care, like a call comes in to then going into a home. Like, what's kind of who are the people? What are the steps?
Yeah, again, Courtney, it would be really different in our county, just because again they would have that foster care caseworker who would be the one calling them and saying, "Hey, we have this placement," and our team knows our foster parents. We try and do a really good job with matching, depending on what they've kind of disclosed in their home study, what they would preference. So making those right matches and placements is really important. And so we would try and give as much information as we possibly know upfront about the child and the needs and what the expectations are going to be. I will say that, just kind of as a sideline, that probably is one of the challenges, which hopefully I get to talk about a little bit more. But we definitely need more foster homes so that we can make better matches. Sometimes we have to go with what we have because, we don't have enough homes. Um, but yeah, so really just I would say to a foster parent getting that first placement is try and ask as many questions as you can of the person that's placing that child in your home. So in our particular situation, in most cases, it's your foster care caseworker. Um, and what I would also suggest is when you're going through your initial training is really getting a kind of like an outline of who does what. So like an intake worker, an ongoing worker, a case aide, and that could be very different for different agencies. But definitely asking, whose role is what, and what does the legal system look like? What does the legal process look like? And being able to just really learn that ahead of time. And then again, if you forget, like having that point person in the agency that you can always, turn to and asking questions, and getting that information from that point person.
Yeah, awesome. So many different caseworkers, different roles. The family caseworker, your caseworker as a foster family is the one that you do the most communication with and that you should know the most. And kind of my kind of go-to is if I have a question, I'm going to reach out to that person. And then if
Hmm.
it needs to be somebody else, they'll point me in the right direction. But yeah, different caseworkers. I know when I first got licensed, and again, it was different when we were in North Dakota, then we moved to Colorado, like the different titles of people or what their role was. When we were in North Dakota, there were some intake caseworkers that also were resource workers, so they did both because it was smaller area. So yeah, like Charmaine said, it's great to ask when you go through your training if they don't already provide it. Like who are the people involved? Who are the people that I should know, and what are their roles? And then what does that mean for me? Like who should I be calling if something comes up? Um, okay, Deborah. So then, kind of walk through licensure. We walk through kid comes into care, but what does that look like for a foster parent to work alongside the system now once a child's in their care? What does that look like for a foster family?
My big thing was communication. I feel like I have a small advantage because I came from that side, that I know the process and I know most of the people. And so that helped a little, and I know what questions to ask. But my real big thing is just communication. I know that caseworkers are busy and overworked and may not remember or think of questions to ask to be kept updated on how our kiddo's doing. But I'm gonna send it anyways so that they know what's going on, the good, the struggles, everything. Um, Asking questions, there's nothing wrong with that, and asking what's going on, information about the case, things that we're entitled to know since the kiddos in our care, um, and having a checklist. I have a checklist of everything that has to be done, especially in like the first 30 days when we get a new placement. Just to make sure we're following all those rules. But really the big thing is communication with all of them, and keeping everyone updated on how the kiddo's doing.
Yeah. So again, now kids in care. I'm Charmaine and kind of mentioned it earlier. Reunification is usually typically going to be the first goal, the primary goal of getting them back to their home. What are some of the things I know people have that I talk to? I try to recruit families all the time, and people are always like, I could never because of the system or because of reunification. I can't support it. And it's like, well, you can when it's a good thing, and it often is a good thing. But what are some of the things, like, just to give people an understanding of what goes into like that plan for the parent or them having to work towards getting their kiddo back? It's not just like, oh, they're in foster care month, now they get their kids back. Like, what are the things that contribute to reunification, and how does that play out in a case? Charmaine.
So a lot of it is a treatment plan is devised by the ongoing worker, and hopefully that ongoing worker is working closely with the biological parents and aligning their treatment plan with what brought those kids into care. And so, if it's mental health issues, if it's substance abuse issues, working that treatment plan that can effectively treat again what brought that kid specifically into care, and that then once that's developed between the caseworker and the biological parents, that will then get approved through the court system. Um, and I often think, yes, it may seem like, well, they didn't really have to do much to get their children back. I'm sure that, there are cases that's, could be true. Um, and I've also seen, within our department, what some of those treatment plans look like. And I would say, as a foster parent, just really having compassion and understanding, um, those biological parents have to go through insurmountable measures, you know, trying overcoming addictions, overcoming or working through mental health stuff. And that's just the beginning. Then they have to start looking at, making sure they have housing and work. And there's just so much to do that hopefully again is captured on their treatment plan. Um, but being able to have that compassionate understanding, um, that it's not just a simple process, but they actually have to accomplish things that may be really, really incredibly hard um, to accomplish for them. Um, and what we like to do here in our county is do icebreakers right from the get-go. So trying to inform our foster parents about, a little bit about the case as much as we can without breaching confidentiality, um, but allowing our foster parents to see that, behind the story, behind maybe the abuse and neglect, there's a real person with real struggles. And so that's what we really try and do from the beginning, is do icebreakers. That's facilitated by a caseworker with a foster parent and then the biological parent, like hopefully within 2 weeks of placement. So they can tell it a little bit of their story, and the foster parent kind of gets a little bit of a glimpse into their world and to see what, you know, who they are, what they're going to have to accomplish. Um, and then just really trying to maintain that connection and try and give foster parents as much information as we can, again, without, breaching confidentiality. But um, I think that that's really important, that whoever, your foster care caseworker is trying to um, give you appropriate updates so that you're feeling like you're a part of the team. And I love, Deborah, what you said just in terms of communication. Absolutely asking questions, trying to get information so you're staying abreast of what's going on in their case, and continuing to have some understanding as biological parents are kind of working towards their goal of getting their kids back.
Yeah, I love the icebreakers. I feel like it just humanizes a lot of this for both sides. I feel like myself as a foster parent, to be able to hear, get to know them, ask them questions about their child, it helps me. But I feel like it does even more for the biological family. Usually it's the mom. It seems like in my cases, it's almost always the mom, sometimes the dad, but usually it's the mom I'm meeting with or we're meeting with. And I feel like it just kind of releases them a little bit of feeling like they don't know where their child is. Who on earth is my child with? And then they get to know us. And then there's like that comfort becomes more of a thing where when we see each other, we can smile at each other, we can talk to each other. And I have felt a very different feeling in the cases where we've been able to have those icebreakers versus when we haven't. And I always think it's really sad when I talk to other people from other states about icebreakers and they don't even know what I'm talking about. They're like, we don't have that in our area. So I'm always like, maybe you should suggest this because it's a great thing. And it really is, for us, a very helpful thing and part of our process. So Deborah, I don't know if you ever had this, but I know I've had, over the years, I've had a couple cases where I didn't necessarily agree or see reunification coming. I will say, I don't know if this is true, just in my experience, the cases we've had over the past 17 years, I feel like when we first got licensed, like 17 years ago, it was a lot easier to get a kid removed from their family, but then it was a lot easier to get them back into their family. Like removal was easier, reunification was easier. And I feel like now removal is a lot harder. Like it's got to be pretty substantial for a kid to be removed now versus when we started. And then at the same point, they're going to really make sure that they're ready for unification. But there still are the times where we've had cases where I'm like, I didn't necessarily agree with that, or I didn't see it coming. Have you ever experienced that? And if so, how do you handle that as a foster parent of, I don't agree with this reunification at this point?
I mean, lots of prayer. But something that I have told many people, um, when that situation comes up, it's usually easiest to blame the caseworker for not listening or not seeing this A, B, and C or whatever, like whatever the situation is. But I do like to remind them that the caseworker is just one slice of the pie, like their slice, and they have their input, and the attorney and you and costs, if you have costs, to all come together and make like a final determination in court. So it's not their fault, or for whatever it is. But we haven't had a specific situation, or we haven't. I know friends have, and we just have to wrap around them. Like lots of prayer that everything's going to be okay. We still are able to communicate our concerns, and what we're seeing, and just pray for the best. And I want them to succeed. We've had one that came back to us after a couple months that we weren't really expecting that to happen. So we weren't necessarily worried and overly concerned in the beginning. And then obviously things happen and the child came back to us for a short time. So that sucks. I mean, it just does. And something that does help us is that there are quite a few families where we've been able to stay in contact with them. So I like this whole we don't have icebreaker things in Texas. I think when I was a caseworker, I feel like the bio parents and fosters were able to meet when they had like their service thing meeting in person, but now everything's virtual since 2020 and they just never went back. So it does kind of take away from that of getting to meet them and letting them know that, like, that we're real people and that we're just a family trying to help. Also, that it's not our fault that this is the situation that everyone's in. But I do like to meet the parents at some point, like if I'm dropping off for a visit or picking up, so they can know me, that I'm not some scary person. And I do have a lot of foster friends that are intimidated by that or scared by that and just don't want to communicate. I'm like, that doesn't help anything. I mean, they need to know that everything's fine, that you're taking care of their babies, and to give them encouragement. Like I don't want bad things to happen. I don't want them to not be successful as parents. Sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes they aren't able to get the kids back. But that's not my goal, and that's not what I want to happen. So letting them know that we're just here to help, and we're not the bad guys. But sorry, I go off on a lot of tangents. But I don't have any contact with, whether it's back home or with family, and just lots of prayer and just making it a positive experience for the kids. So like if they're nervous about going home or to a new family, or to a family placement, making sure it's a positive experience for them, even though we have concerns in our mind and our hearts, they don't need to know that and see that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. Good point. So kind of going back to this, like hard conversations or hard things that happen when you foster. It's not easy emotionally, spiritually, physically, all of it. I mean, it's hard. That's just the truth. I have been around quite a few foster families, and a lot of them feel like they just don't have any say in anything. And there are some things that we as foster parents we don't have a say in that, and there are areas that we can speak up and we can say stuff. So, Shabine, can you kind of describe that difference and maybe share a couple things? What are some things that foster parents do have a say in, and maybe what are some things that where they don't have a say? That's just not their role.
Yeah, I think I'll admit actually for myself first, there are many times that I don't feel like I have a say. And I probably am, we have staff meetings every week, every other week on different cases. And just recognizing that I am one of sometimes 10, 12 people sitting around their table. And so just recognizing this may seem very flippant, and I certainly don't mean to make it sound that way because I hear that all the time too, as foster parents say, even though they have good communication, there's often that it's not heard or they don't feel a part of the team. And that really, that gosh, that's very frustrating for me because I try very hard to change that for parents and listen and get their opinion heard and make them feel like, foster parents are definitely, they are part of the team, and educating caseworkers and educating other people in the team that absolutely foster parents are very much part of the team. But then also just being able to tell foster parents, yeah, unfortunately that's not only part of the foster care and the child welfare system. That is something that's very real in life. That do the very best you can to set great in intent from the beginning, like you said, Deborah, earlier, trying to establish good communication, trying to set out reach out to people with positive intent. I have one foster parent that right from the get-go of the case is just so optimistic and so positive, and really did all she could to like establish with the ongoing worker and the GAL, and even though they don't necessarily always email her back, every single month she'll send beautiful pictures of the kids in her care and a beautiful email just kind of saying, here's what this child is doing, and here's how well they're doing, and talks about the ups and the downs. And I, often I'll read that and I'm like, yeah, she's got it right. You know what I mean? Like, she may not be at the head of the table making all the decisions, and probably a lot of times feels completely like out of control, but she's doing the best she can by um, taking time to write this amazing email with all the details about her children, and engaging the power players at the table, and making sure that every single month she's sending this email and updating no matter what. And I'm just like, people, honestly, now when we have meetings with kind of just the players of the team, they're like, oh my gosh, we totally love this person. She's so positive. She's so kind. She's so respectful. She's so engaging. You can tell she totally is so invested and loves these kids, and never is trying to kind of push an agenda, but really, again, stays focused as best she can on the best interests, and does the best she can to influence um, the other people by establishing a relationship, a positive relationship. So that's kind of, I kind of answered that question, Courtney, and kind of a description of a foster parent that's kind of done it right. But you definitely can communicate with your ongoing worker, communicate through email with the legal team, show up at court. Be careful about your body language in court. You don't know who's watching you. You don't know the judge watching you. As soon as you can, I encourage all foster parents to become special respondents so that they can be parties to that case. I know in the state of Colorado, we made it a little harder for general foster parents, but there's still a way. And so doing the best that you can and taking advantage of what is available to you, and putting out, again, like just a positive intent, and being a positive person in your facial expressions, how you say things, even on email, when you show up in court, like you said, Deborah, at visits, exchanging, um, being able to say positive things to biological parents, giving them encouragement, asking them, "Hey, how are you doing?" Like sincerely meaning that, and just again being careful, um, of of things that you say that may be interpreted in a negative light. So there's so much that I can say, how foster parents can really, in a lot of ways, not necessarily by showing up on the stand, but you have a lot of power, in how you address biological parents and how you address caseworkers, and how you present yourself in ways that you're given the opportunity, to be present.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. Thanks for sharing that, Charmaine. Yeah, we kind of talked a little bit about the different types of caseworkers. I kind of jumped the gun that there a little bit earlier. So, Deborah, let's think about kind of what Charmaine just said. All these things that she was just talking about as foster parents, understanding that we don't, what our role is. Our role is to care for these kids the best that we can for the time that they're in our care, right? And whatever that looks like. But there are some things we don't get a say in. So how can foster parents, and we know we've got all these caseworkers, we've got guardian ad litems, we've got CASAs, we've got different people, therapists. How can foster parents work well as part of a team while still following the rules and kind of being in their place? How can they work well on the team? Oh, hold on one second. You're muted. There you
Oh,
go.
I mean, my big thing is communication. Being an advocate for my home and for the placements that are with me during that time, between the caseworker, attorney, CASA, or guardian ad litem. They're not they're not living with the child 24/7 like we are. There are things that are not going to be they're not going to be able to see and understand in a
Mhm.
home visit each month. So just communicating with them what we're seeing, what we're feeling about what's going on. I mean, we throw out our opinion about everything anyways, and they can just take it, and do whatever. But knowing that I've had so many, not so many, I've had several friends or people that I know close because they can't handle it anymore, or can't deal with the system or all the things that go with it. But that doesn't help anyone. That hurts the kids that could have been placed in their home in the future. So just knowing that there are rules in place for a reason. We may not agree with all of them, but
Mhm.
they're there and we just make it work. We make it work as a family, how it works best for us in our family, in our home. And just advocating for them and what they need.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, Charmaine, thinking of what she just said now, what are maybe some of the things that foster parents just don't understand? Things that maybe happen behind the system, like red tape or legislation that, like, we just don't have, we can't change, and so they just have to understand better to understand foster care as a whole, but the system as we're talking about.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, just echoing again, sorry, Deborah, like, yeah, there's so many times that I also don't agree with everything, and I also, don't always understand why we have to do certain things. And just remembering, I'm part of this team to impact and make a difference in this child's life. Remembering truly what that is. And Courtney, kind of segueing from there, I think the most, misunderstood thing amongst all of us is the best interest of a child. Um, I think if we were to look at the definition, we'd probably like be, wow, that's what that means, and then just really understanding as a foster parent, what that means for the different roles, and sometimes not always understanding, what the best interest means to like a biological parent or an ongoing caseworker or a judge, or the attorneys for the biological parents, um, that they have certain things that they're mandated to do as well. Um, And we may not always understand that. We may not, a lot of times, know actually what they're mandated to do. That it's not just something that a caseworker has pulled out of their hat and they're like, we're going to do this today. But there's a lot of mandates that even workers don't agree with and don't always understand and try their best to advocate for change. And change is so slow. But just understanding that we're all doing, honestly, I would say for the most part, we're all trying to do the very best we can with the rules and the regs and the mandates that we're all given. And I have had to meet with several foster parents over the years who are like, we just don't understand why, you have to do X, Y, and Z. And it's like, you see it from your lens, and what you understand the situation to be. But I say this very respectfully, sometimes we don't always get to see the big picture, whether that be because of confidentiality, because we may not understand all the rules and the regs and what everybody's mandated to do. But I think sometimes and this is something I'm trying to learn in my own personal life, is assuming positive intent on everybody's part. And I think that's one of the big things that we're really lacking in the child welfare system, is just really assuming, we assume negative intent. This person's lazy, this person's not doing their job, and we don't get to see the big picture. We don't get to see everything. So yeah, I think that there's a lot of mandates that foster parents don't necessarily know that, this is what we're mandated. There's a timeline, there's a judge, there's biological parents' attorneys, there's things that we have to follow. And yeah, it doesn't always make sense. And just trying to assume positive intent on everybody's part, and trying to be the best team player that you possibly can be.
I love that positive intent. And we did a podcast episode a while back on caseworkers, like what caseworkers wish foster parents knew and foster parents wish caseworkers knew. And the big heart of the podcast was like, I'm around it. I'm around foster parents who get so mad at caseworkers so easily, or about silly things, sometimes big things, but they just get mad. And it's like, do you really think these caseworkers just want to do harm to you or want to do harm to these kids? Like they entered this field because they care. All of us at this table are here because we care. I truly believe that. Every single person is at the table because they care. And so we have to understand that and give them that positive intent, and just know there's a lot of people. And when you're working with a lot of people, things get messy. But that doesn't mean we can't try to work well together as a team and hear each other out, give our opinions, and know, like, kind of like Deborah said, like I give my opinion on things, I'll share things, but it's like, but I also know, okay, I said it, I voiced my opinion, but now it's not up to me. And sometimes that's freeing too, as a foster parent, to realize, you know what, I don't have to make those hard decisions. I can be supporting my care, and I can share what happens, or situations that I see, things I might see going on in visitation, whatever it might be. But then at the end of the day, I don't have to be making that really hard decision. And they are hard decisions. This is not easy stuff when it comes to child welfare. So it's hard things. Okay, as we get ready to wrap this up, I want to hear from both of you. If you could change one thing in this imperfect but yet needed system, if you could change one thing in the system, what would it be? Who wants to go first?
I guess I can.
I'll go first. Deborah, you're welcome to go first
Sure.
too.
I mean, it sounds so silly, but I mean, from my perspective, it's all the red tape for us. So I know there's rules in place for a reason and all the requirements, but there's just so much, and it overwhelms people. Like if I wrote down everything we do, everything, like all the trainings, all the paperwork every single month, all the things we had to change to our house, it would be lengthy and scary if I just handed that to someone new. Here you go. This is what you got to do. It's not like we did it one day, though. I mean, it was a process, and we just incorporated it into our life. And so it looks scary, but it's doable. I know I don't individually have the ability to change it. I'm not a legislator. I have the ability to voice my opinion and my concerns and go from there. So that's always our little complaint. So we wish could change, and someday maybe. But I mean, we just make it work. We've also kind of re-upped our foster parent association here in my town. And just in general, having your community of foster friends. Because I can't call a random friend and just start complaining or stress talking about what's going on with the system, because they won't really understand. Having that community of friends where you can go to for advice or for respite care when you need a break or babysitting, is always needed in a community. So
Yeah, I love it. It made me kind of think, I think if I was to answer that before Charmaine does, I would think even just easing some of the stuff for the foster parents. I hope you enjoyed today's webinar. I'm going to want to remind you that this is the second webinar in our series called Understanding. We have another webinar launching on October 7th called Understanding Fostering and Adopting Teens. We have 3 great guests. You will love, love, love this conversation. Annika was in foster care as a teen and was adopted as an adult. Tracy adopted 2 teens from our I Belong project. And then my husband, Bobby, is also joining us to share his experiences as a foster and adoptive dad of teenagers. And part of this series as well, we have other great ones coming up. I want to remind you, though, that all these are launched. These ones are being launched every 3 weeks, but we also have a wealth of information on our website, FosterCon.org. We've got webinars from past series, actually 2 series now. So this is the 3rd year that we're doing FosterCon. Great things on there, great content. Again, trying to equip you well and train you well. These webinars do take substantial time and resources to run. So if you really enjoy our webinars, if you get a lot out of them and you say, hey, I would love to give towards this, we would so appreciate it. You can use the QR code right now or just go to americaskidsbelong.org and choose donate, where you can make your tax deductible donation. And again, yes, these are available for CE credit. So at fostercon.org, there's a form. You can click on the form, and when you're there, it'll ask you just a couple easy questions that verifies that you've watched this webinar, and you can get that CE certificate for your hours that you need. Please note that I do personally make every single one of these. I read the forms and make sure people watch them, and then I hand make them, type them in. So it takes me a little bit of time. So give me at least a week, but I promise you will have it in your inbox soon. Thanks again for joining us. Again, I want to encourage you, check out fostercon.org for other great webinars, and check out our podcast, the Foster Friendly Podcast, where we have guests for all walks of foster care, former foster youth, biological kids, caseworkers, lawyers. We have it all. And so I'd encourage you to check that out as well, again, to equip you well for the journey that you're on. Thanks.